And he tells us that this is an Arabic-speaking Black man, a native of Moor, which is a small town south of Casablanca on the Atlantic coast of Morocco. And that's pretty much it. That's the biographical information we have about this man. I was reading a book about Moorish Spain, and I came across a mention of this Moroccan slave who was said to be the first Muslim / the first Black explorer of America. And I said, hang on a minute, what does that mean? And who is this guy? And what is going on? And so I ended up looking him up, and I discovered that he had been part of Cabeza de Vaca's expedition to what is now the United States. Back then was just North America. And I had heard of Cabeza de Vaca, but I had never heard of this guy. And he was one of only 4 survivors. He had the exact same experience as Cabeza de Vaca of arriving in Florida. The expedition basically fails. They do not find what they're there to find, which is gold. And they end up getting lost, and they end up crossing North America for about 8 years, whereupon they are found in Texas, and they are brought down to Mexico City, where they are asked to give a testimony of what happened. It's just an incredible story of adventure. And the result of it, and the reason that we even know about this story, is that Cabeza de Vaca, upon being rescued and being brought to Mexico City, he stays there for a couple of years, and then he returns to Spain. And in 1542, he publishes an account of that incredible journey. And that account is the earliest account that we have of Spanish exploration of North America. Wow. Some of the things that these survivors saw, and some of the people that they encountered, no longer exists. So we don't actually have any other testament of it than what is in Cabeza de Vaca's account. So for example, when they arrive on what is now Galveston Island in Texas, they bring with them their own diseases. And so they infect Native American tribes, and pretty much entire tribes are decimated because of these diseases. So we don't actually have right now, documents from those tribes because they have been decimated, but we do have Cabeza de Vaca's account of it. So that's what I mean that's the earliest account that we have of exploration. And for that reason, for a number of reasons, is a valuable document in itself. And it's a very small book. And I remember the very first page of that book says that it was a present to the King of Spain, and that it was being given to him, and that it's it's an account of what the expedition has seen. And it was very clear to me just from the dedication page that Cabeza de Vaca was trying to convince the king that he had done a good job of the license that had been given to this expedition. And so that's how that it's taken as history, but it's obviously written by a man who had a very clear agenda. At the time, Cabeza de Vaca was trying to get a license to become governor of Argentina. So it was in his interest to show the king that he was a good explorer, and that, everything that happened in the book did not display, insubordination or disobeying the orders of the king, or breaking, religious rituals, or getting together with Native women because they were all married men. Like there's all kinds of things that couldn't happen. It couldn't be talked about in the book. And so when I read it, I was amazed just by the adventure of it, and by the kind of ways in which history, to our modern eyes especially, you can see where things had been airbrushed in order to fit a particular vision. Yeah. And at the end of that book, he talks about the 4 survivors, and he mentions this man, the character, Mustafa Essamuri. And he tells us that this is an Arabic-speaking Black man, a native of Moor, which is a small town south of Casablanca on the Atlantic coast of Morocco. And that's pretty much it. That's the biographical information we have about this man. He does, once they are found in Mexico City and they stay there 2 years, he goes on another expedition up north in preparation for Coronado's expedition to New Mexico. And therefore he ends up in another book, just a little booklet. He ends up in another book written by a friar that basically describes him in the same ways. But we don't really know how this Moroccan man ended up on a Spanish expedition. The Spaniards did not have trading posts. It was the Portuguese that had trading posts in Azamor. There was a Portuguese trading post. So clearly from Azamor, he had to have come into Portuguese hands, and from the Portuguese traded to the Spaniards, somehow ends up being the slave of this captain on the expedition and ends up with him on the expedition.